Okay, welcome back to my latest installment of the real life series of videos. I left this off with Pinhead and I having what I thought was an agreement as far as the property lines goes, and then I was actually going to segue that into what transpired that kind of blew up. But you know, I just realized there's a whole lot of stuff that happened in between, which I kind of want to cover. Because I think it's fairly important. Because actually, truthfully, from that point to the point where there's a huge problem between me and Pinhead is actually a few months. So I don't want to condense it like that. So Pinhead and I actually start, well, I don't want to say, I guess I could say hanging out. He comes over my house, he brings a couple of beers, he brings his buddy Lowell over. Lowell's a pretty cool dude. And, you know, at that point, things were so bad in the holler with Super Trooper and Frito's clan that, truthfully, I was happy to have anybody as a buddy around there. And in all honesty, I gave Pinhead the benefit of the doubt in the sense that when we first met and he acted like a lunatic, the fact is that, you know, the surveyor did have it screwed up. So, you know, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. So Pinhead's coming over every day, you know, and we're hanging out, we're four-wheeling, we're hunting, we're shooting. You know, don't get me wrong, he and I are on a completely different level intellect-wise. You know, he's a dude that is completely cool with everybody calling him Pinhead. And, you know, in fact, it's funny because I mentioned it to him one time because literally everybody calls him Pinhead. And I said to him, I said, dude, I said, I'll be honest with you. I think if somebody called me Pinhead to my face, I'd have to put them on their ass. He goes, well, you know, it's my nickname. He said, they don't mean it like that. If they did, I would. And I'm like, well, I didn't realize that there were, you know, multiple ways to use the word Pinhead, you know, but apparently in his mind there was. And when people called him Pinhead, but what he didn't know was everybody laughed about him, and literally we're talking, you know, when they call him Pinhead, they really meant Pinhead. So he didn't get it. Joke was on him, but, you know, probably the story of his life. But anyway, so getting to know Pinhead was a real treat for me. He's an interesting character. At that time, he was his four-wheeler of choice was his Brute Force 650 Kawasaki. And he, as he liked to say, Kawasaki lets the good times roll, you know. And he was helpful at the time. He helped me put my tree stand up, you know. And for a scrawny bastard, he was actually fairly strong. Which brings me to the whole check drawing thing. You know, one thing I've learned about check drawers is that they're conditioned to believe that they get a piece of the pie regardless if they had anything to do with either buying it or making it. Okay, I mean, that's kind of the way it is. When the government starts out sending you money every month that really you're not entitled to, you get a feeling of entitlement. You know, it's a sad reality of socialism. And if anybody ever wants to see where socialism takes a country, go down to Southeast Kentucky or Appalachia in general, and you will see the majority of the people down there doing what they call drawing a check. You ask people what they do for, draw me a check, okay? And they get a Social Security check, but actually, theirs is actually an SSI check, which is Social Security for people who never paid into the system. So if Social Security ever goes broke, it'll be because of the policy of giving people like Pinhead disability checks when, truthfully, they had no business ever getting a disability check. And, you know, and I'm talking about a guy who gets a disability check apparently because he's got a bad back, but yet I watched him literally hump that Brute Force 650 4x4 four-wheeler up the side of a mountain. I don't know how many, literally hundreds of times. You know, he can hunt, he can fish, he can four-wheel, he can do all those things, but yet he can't work. And so, now the tricky thing for people like Pinhead, though, is that when you draw a check for disability under SSI, you're not really allowed to own anything, okay? And that makes it kind of difficult for people like Pinhead, because Pinhead not only was a check drawer, But Pinhead was also a Becky grower. Now, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Pinhead grew marijuana and was fairly successful at it. I asked him one time, I said, dude, how much money do you make, growing your Becky? Because, one thing you have to understand, I mean, and especially if you've watched my real life videos, I personally think marijuana should be legalized. I really do. Because if they legalized it, it would take it out of the hands of these criminals and put it into the hands of farmers who are legitimate businessmen. It's neither here nor there. I never had a problem with the marijuana. The problem I had with the marijuana was that because they had their marijuana growing on my property, they did not want me to harvest my timber, which was a problem for me, So I'm a live and let live kind of guy. I really, truly am. You do your thing, I'll do mine. As long as what you're doing doesn't affect me, whatever, I prefer you not to be a dirtbag, but I do make a major distinction between marijuana and hardcore drugs. But, we'll get to that in a minute. So, Pinhead told me, he said, he goes, the helicopters get some, the ginsengers get some. He said, but I can usually make about $50K a year tax-free. So Pinhead's drawing about $650 a month for his bad back that, the taxpayers are paying for. He's also got a medical card, so he's got socialized health care. And on top of that, he's got $50K a year coming in, which is why, by the way, if you look at people like him, he has so much stuff. He literally owns, I don't know, but I'd say right around 300 acres of property. Of course, none of it's in his own name, because you can't have anything in your name when you're a check drawer. So everything's in his dad's name, or other family members' names, but primarily his dad. So he has amassed literally kind of a little empire, and the whole time collecting, his disability check from the government because he's got a bad back. Which, he's never paid a dime in the Social Security in his life, which is why he's getting SSI instead of Social Security disability. If he was on Social Security disability, he could own stuff, but that's not the gig that he has going. So anyway. So as I'm hanging with Pinhead, I'm finding out more and more and more about his life, because you know what? He's a pillhead. He takes a certain pill and he just starts running to suck. That's what he does. He runs his mouth. He tells you whatever, what he doesn't care. And one day, he's building a garage. Well, he's not building a garage, but he's basically, he's got subcontractors out there. He had a guy come out and he poured the cement foundation, another guy that started laying the block. And I literally watched him pay the block layer in pain pills to build this garage for him. Okay? And here's how this works, okay? Because at that point I start to figure out that Pinhead is not just growing marijuana, he's also selling pills. Basically, Pinhead is a Frito. Not quite to that level, but Frito nonetheless. Well, maybe even, truthfully, in a lot of ways, a bigger player than Frito ever was. The way a lot of it works for these drug dealers down there is that there's so many people drawing an SSI check for disabilities, and so many of them are getting pain pill prescriptions for their so-called ailments. So what they do is, because they don't have ailments, a lot of them will turn around and they will sell their pills. So if you get a prescription for, say, Oxycontin, and I don't know, maybe that prescription's, let's just say it's 30 pills for the month. You turn around, you sell those 30 pills to Pinhead, okay, and then Pinhead turns around and then he resells them. So Pinhead's getting them at a wholesale price from the person who actually had them prescribed to him, and then he's actually selling them at a retail price, and that's a huge markup. So Pinhead basically is getting a garage built, and a nice garage too. A garage that would probably cost me, 25, maybe 30 grand to build. He's probably having the whole thing done for less than 10, if that, probably less than 5. Anyway, it's 9:40 now. I will come back and tell you a little bit more about Pinhead.